Hello, and welcome to our series on mediation basics. We're going to talk a little bit this month about just some of the basic skills that we can, when we talk about mediation, the whole point is that we're helping people communicate better, we're solving problems, we're addressing conflicts. So even if you are not a professional mediator, which most of us aren't, in some roles, maybe you're a mom or a grandparent, or you're in a group at church or some other club or organization, sometimes we get conflict, right? Mediation skills allow us to reduce conflict and create a more positive environment. So, we're going to be talking a little bit about that over the next few weeks. I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, your family and consumer science agent. So, let's jump right in. So, we're going to be looking at listening and acknowledgement, restating and reflecting, reframing, and then some summarizing and responding. Again, basic skills, how we can maybe take and use our words to set that positive environment and help alleviate some of that conflict. So, it's not just about how we communicate, but about helping others communicate in a positive way. So I said, this first one, we're going to talk a little about listening and acknowledgement. So it's a critical skill for facilitating any group discussion. Listening is extremely important. Now, unfortunately, most of us have learned about competitive listening. We're listening with the goal of responding, as opposed to really listening to what the other person is saying. So we listen selectively to hope we can influence or win an argument. And research indicates that on average, we are effective listeners at only a 25% efficiency rate. Y'all, a quarter of the time we're listening and we're being effective. And the rest of the time, we're not. So listening skills are a huge thing when we talk about managing conflict and having better communication. And then when we talk about acknowledging, that basically means that we listen and hear and we meet them where they are. We let them know, hey, I've heard you. Uh, I know I can say back something that recognizes what you said, whether you agree with them or not. You've heard them and you can acknowledge their emotion and their message for what they're trying to share. So, knowing that only 25% of the time we're listening like we should, our challenge is to listen for understanding without a bias or prejudice. Just listening will improve our understanding of our part and of what's going on with the rest of the group or that other individual. And so, one way that we can check these things and improve our listening are some of these following tips. So sometimes listening is about being silent and giving your undivided attention to the person speaking. You give them your full focused attention on what they're saying, not looking at your phone, not again, just worrying about how you're going to respond, but really zeroing in on what they're saying and how they're saying it. It's the ability to really hear and receive the message from the speaker's point of view without preparing to respond. Okay, so again, we're not just thinking about, what do I say? How am I going to answer this? We're really listening to their words and what they are saying so that we understand where they are coming from. Careful listening helps us see through other people's eyes to see how they see it, whether we agree it or not, to understand they see it differently and how they're looking at that, and to know what their feelings and their assumptions are. Sometimes we want to hear, hey, they've made an assumption here that's not correct, and then we can work on how we're going to address that. So careful listening allows us to let the others know that we're really hearing them. So listening is a fundamental communication skill. It helps us solve problems collaboratively, work better as a group, and have positive interaction with others. So along with that, we're listening, we're hearing, we're understanding where they're coming from, and then we're going to acknowledge that for them, because that's going to change how they respond and communicate with us. So acknowledging does not mean that we agree. It does not mean giving up your point of view. What it does mean is recognizing how they are different from you as where you might agree. So sometimes there's that meet in the middle. Well, I agree with this piece, but not this piece. That can be a great way to acknowledge someone else, that I don't completely think you're wrong. I don't completely not respect you, but we're coming at this from two different points. And that's where acknowledgement comes in. Sometimes acknowledgement, you can do that because you're hearing between the lines and what's coming out behind the words. Sometimes their emotions, and we'll talk more about that as we go, but sometimes their emotions are what's getting in the way. They're upset, they're angry, they're not able to hear what you're saying until you can acknowledge that. So it means listening and accepting in place of just preparing your own remarks or defending your position, but listening and responding appropriately to the other person. So, as we mentioned, acknowledgement then can soften an attitude enough to change that stubborn part. Maybe they'll be more willing to want to know what you think. They want to know that you've heard them first and foremost. It can prevent escalation of a conflict. Hey, I hear you. I get where you're coming from, even if you don't agree, but you can acknowledge that, and that can prevent it from really blowing up or becoming bigger. And then, acknowledgement can encourage conversation, and it avoids the blame and the attack that can come about, again, because we get upset about what's going on and we don't agree with one another and we have a conflict and nobody's listening to me. So listening and acknowledging are going to be two huge things in how we manage and deal with conflict within that group, which again, maybe your family, maybe a club, an organization, but somewhere, maybe at work, somewhere where you're dealing with other people. These are things that can be done, tips you could take and use to kind of de-escalate some situations. So basic mediation is what we're going to be talking about for these next couple of weeks. Again, I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, your family and consumer science agent. Next time, we're going to tackle another topic.